What's up, y'all? This is DJ Radon, and today we're going to be dealing with some smoke and mirrors. We're going to be shattering the mirrors and shattering the glass and clearing out the smoke. All right, so for a lot of people that do know, and for people that don't know, I invented a system of notation called the turntablist transcription methodology. It's a system of notation for all forms of DJ music, from scratching to beat juggling to whatever. And it can also work for regular, different other types of instruments too. So it can work for, a trombone, it could work for a guitar, it could work for anything. Even, I created something called lyrical transcription methodology as well that works for vocalists.
What you say, I take none of it seriously, and that you serious. You're gonna understand.
Now, today we're going to be talking about why I expelled John Carluccio, the Battle Sounds creator, why I expelled John Carluccio from my TTM project about, over a decade ago. So I'm going to go through a brief kind of chronological history of what happened. So back in 1999, I had created this, right? I had created the fundamentals. You see that, right? The fundamentals. This is the first book ever on scratch notation. All right, so I created this in 1999, and I contacted John Carluccio because I knew that he was a filmmaker that had got a lot of media attention for his Battle Sounds documentary. So I had contacted him in 1999. I was only 20 years old, so I was still a student at NYU, at New York University, and studying information systems in the Stern School of Business. And so I contacted John. I was only 20, and I was like, hey, maybe a month or a couple months before that, I had thrown an event at NYU called The Essence. I threw this big party. It was like, it was like a 4-element kind of party where I had b-boys, maybe some graph writers and turntablists, cypher, and MCs and stuff like that, right? So I had him speak at that event, so that was one of the first times I met him, was earlier that year, 99. But then later that year, 99, I guess it was maybe around December or something, I contacted him about this, the fundamentals. This is the first book on scratch notation. And I said, hey, I've created a book on scratch notation, and I want to meet up with you, because I had heard, through the grapevine, I had heard that he was also working on something. So when I met with him, I met him and Ethan in Bowdoin, and we sat down in a coffee shop. And when I first met up with him, I gave him this actual copy of this. So this was actually like like the zine version. I'll be releasing the book versions of this year. I was still selling zine versions even up to last year, but this is in a re-release, like a zine re-release. But I'm gonna have the official book version of this. It's only like 7-8 pages or something, but this is the first book on scratch notation. So when I met up with John Carluccio, I handed him and Ethan a copy of this book. So before I even created this book called TTM 1.0 that most people in the scratch world know about, I had created this book called The Fundamentals, and I handed it to John Carluccio and Ethan and Bowdoin when we met up at a cafe somewhere. So we met up at a cafe, they looked through the book, and they're like, wow, they're like, we're trying to, come together and create a scratch notation system. And I had already given them this whole, finished book, right? So this is the first book on scratch notation that ever existed, right, on Earth. This is the first book. In other lectures, I'm going to talk about why A-Track is lying, and all these other people came out of the woodwork. He even A-Track told Kanye West, like, oh, he invented this, but I invented this. I have all the proof in the world. But so what happened was, so I met up with John Carluccio. I knew that, he had a lot of contacts with, people in the industry and stuff like that. I was still in school. I was 20. And then, so we met up, and then they liked the book. They liked this book. This is the first book on Skratch notation, right? So then what we did was we joined together, and then we created the second book on Skratch notation that ever existed. So this is a very, very old copy. This is probably for some of the first runs. I have a bunch of different ones. So this is like one of the very, very first copies, right? This came out February 17th, 2000, right? So, for those that don't know, TTM just had its 21st birthday, right? So, on February 17th last month, I forgot to tell everybody about it, but February 17th last month was, TTM's 21st birthday. So so what happened was, after we had that first meeting at the coffee shop where I gave John and Ethan a copy of this, the next time we had a meeting, we went to Ethan's studio somewhere in Manhattan, and then we just started working on TTM 1.0. We started working on this book right here, TTM 1.0, and I'm not sure how long it took, but everything that's in this book, I transcribed every single thing that's in this book. So John nor Ethan and Bowden ever transcribed anything in this book, right? So as far as the past 2 decades, anything that you've seen that has, like John Carluccio's name on it, all that stuff is fake. All that stuff is fake. It's him copying my stuff. So first of all, John can't scratch, right? He can't juggle. I've been with him in his studio. He can't scratch, he can't juggle, and he can't read any sheet music. He was never trained in classical music notation. As far as myself, I started the violin when I was 4 years old, at the Milwaukee Conservatory. I'm pretty sure that's what it's called, the Milwaukee Conservatory, right by the water. But I'll in the enhanced version, I'll put a picture of the Milwaukee Conservatory and all that stuff. But yeah, I started in the violin, and then when I was probably around that same age, I didn't like the violin, so I told my mom I didn't want to do it. And then I think, then I went into the recorder like everybody else does, in like maybe 5th grade or something. And then I moved on to the trombone in junior high, and then I joined my high school jazz band at Paideia when I moved to Atlanta. So I was, I was classically trained before I created Skratch notation, before I created the turntablist transcription methodology. And I always hated regular music notation. I was always like, I would just memorize the stuff, and I just felt like it was all disjointed. I didn't like how I just didn't like regular music notation. And half the time I used to just, memorize all the stuff. All right, so back to the story. So I collaborated with them. I linked up with John, who at the time was, known for his work on battle sounds and being a filmmaker. And he had a friend named Ethan and Bowden who was working with him, who was an industrial designer, whose senior dissertation, or not dissertation, I guess senior industrial design project was it was basically like a lot of different like futuristic turntable styles and stuff like that, which is pretty sick. I've still never seen it. But so what happened was, we linked up in Ethan's studio, and we cracked out this whole book in maybe a weekend or something like that. I did every single. So I'm going to go through quickly, and we're just going to look at the book very, very quickly. So this is the very, very this is one of the early runs of this. Actually, this is a run that came after. This is by thetruth.com. John was able to hook up a sponsorship with thetruth.com. So basically why I brought John into the project was because, I didn't have any contacts in the industry, and he was able to get it out there. So on February 17th, we released the book at Symphony Space in Harlem. And I believe that was the same day that Qbert was performing at that show. John had booked Qbert for that night. I think he gave him like $5,000 or something at that point. And I remember being like, wow, he got $5,000. That's so much money. And I think that was the night that Qbert actually got the, I believe he got awarded as, Grand Master or Grand Mixer or something like that. He might have gotten an award there. I think there was an open turntablist cipher there, but these books were given away there. We gave these books as a free promo. So this is the second book on scratch notation, my second book on scratch notation, where I collaborated with John Carluccio and Ethan and Bowden. Now, basically, the only thing that Ethan and Bowden did in the book was help me create this this actual the grid. He helped me refine the grid, because in my book, this one 1.0, my grid, everything I did in this book was in Photoshop. This is before I was doing After Effects. Before I was doing Adobe Illustrator. So everything I was doing, like when I created, when I had all these, these grids right here, right? The grids where you plot the TTM notation on it. All those grids, I hadn't, they were like actual, they weren't vectors, So in his studio, I used Adobe Illustrator, and I, recreated everything with vectors, and he made the initial, the grid, we made that together. So that's the only thing that Ethan and Bowden did on this first book, right? My second book on scratch notation. So that was their first book on it, and it was my second book on it, right? And so basically, we cracked out the book. Came out February 17th. Now, in later that year at ScratchCon 2000, I had submitted for the DJ Qbert Scholarship, and that was one of the reasons actually why I made this book. The fundamentals was to submit this to DJ Qbert. They had a organization before Throw Up Rumble. They had this thing called the Global Skratch Foundation, and with the Global Skratch Foundation, they're the ones that threw the event at ScratchCon 2000 at Yerba Buena Convention Center in San Francisco. So when I went there, I guess they notified me beforehand that I had won the scholarship. He actually gave me $1,000. The DJ Qbert scholarship was $1,000. They gave me $1,000. I turned around and went and bought a 07 mixer, which costed $9.99 at that time. So I actually kind of gave him the money back, or really gave it to Vestax, because I'm sure he's only getting royalties from that. But so at ScratchCon 2000 in 2000. In the year 2000, and I guess that was July 2000, we had the books there, so they released those books just like we had released them at Symphony Space. John was able to talk to Qbert, and Qbert, the people at Dirt Style at the time, they gave the books out in the packages for ScratchCon, like they had grab bags at the end of the event or whatever. But what was interesting is at ScratchCon, A-Track actually gave a presentation plagiarizing my system, and and even in his presentation, he actually said, I've seen other notation systems out there, but so his first lecture on scratch notation, he admitted that he had already seen my notation out there, and so which proves that he plagiarized it. But that's a whole nother lecture I'll be doing in the future. All right, but this is just on John Carluccio. All right, so after ScratchCon happened, I was like, wow, that's weird. We didn't get to, present our notation at ScratchCon. I'm like, why is that? Like, that's strange. I invented this whole thing, like, but at least at least we had our book inside of the, inside of the grab bag. But see, what I didn't know at the time, I was still very young. I didn't understand cronyism. I didn't understand that John and Qbert or whoever had talked, and they're just kind of like, like, hey, we're not going to present anything, so A-Track can kind of get the credit even though we have the real book or whatever, and A-Track was able to use that and lie in his press releases for 20 years, all the way to now. His press release still says he invented my system. All right, so moving on. So then so once again in this book, everything in this book, all the transcriptions in this book, I did every single transcription in the book. The only thing that John had done in this book is write the descriptions, and he had actually pulled the descriptions from Asus Phonics. He just went to Asus Phonics, and it'd be like, a stab scratch, and Access Phonics explained what a stab scratch was. So then, he would just write, pretty much the same thing, whatever Access Phonics had. And the second this came out later that year, I think Access Phonics like maybe turned off their site or something happened. They got mad, or so I don't know what happened. But John literally was just, looking at the Access Phonics site when he was typing these descriptions. All right. Now, so then we're going to fast forward to 2005. So, in 2001, there was this company called, I forget what this name was, but out of Manhattan. It was a sheet music company out of Manhattan, and we were talking about a book deal with them, and that never panned out in like 2001. And so by 2005, John hit me up. He was like, yo, there's this thing called Skratch Magazine, and they want you, to have some DJ transcriptions in there, some scratch notation in there. So I was like, oh yeah, that sounds cool. So, and maybe it was like the first 4 or 5, maybe the first 4 issues had my notations in it. Maybe it was the first 5 or something like that. And I got that right here. I got them right here. So like, this might have been the first one with Dr. Dre on the front, right? So it says, Skratch Magazine, and then it says exclusive DJ battle transcriptions, and all these say that. So like they had this, and they had Dr. Dre on the front. The second one was the Neptunes on the front. You see at the top it says DJ battle transcriptions on it, right? And then then they had Kanye in the front, right? And you see it says, once again, it says DJ battle transcriptions. But once again, A-Track told Kanye that he invented this, so this whole time, next time I run into Kanye, I'm going to tell him that A-Track was lying, because the last time I ran into Kanye, I was modeling at a Yves Saint Laurent shoot that my homie Sable hooked me up with, that and it was like I guess it was like a Benjamin Millipede, or I forget how you pronounce his name, the French pronunciation of his name, the guy that married from Black Swan, the guy that married the actress from Black Swan, the one from Star Wars. But so this was like maybe the 3rd issue or something like that. And so I was transcribing all these routines. I'll show you what they look like. Let me open this up. I was transcribing these routines. All right, let me see. The routines right here, like this right here, Rocket. I transcribed this, Rocket by Grand Mixer DST or DXT. And, so it just had a bunch of cool stuff like that, right? So we had a bunch of issues where I was transcribing it, and then John would write a blurb to go with all my transcriptions. He never sent me 1 penny. I never got paid 1 penny from this. I had to actually buy these magazines. I had to go to the store and buy this myself. And like my mom may have bought a copy or something, because maybe in New York I couldn't find it on the shelf one month of one of the issues, and this was like 2005. So I actually had to buy these myself, and I never got paid for these. John kept all the money, right? So like we were supposed to be working together. He kept all the money. And then, years later, I didn't realize that he was telling people that he invented TTM, and I was just helping him. And I'm like, what? I'm like, yo, that's it. And that's how I expelled John. I was like, when I found out, I was like, what? People are saying John invented this? I haven't seen my name in anything. In 2005, John began work, really it was like around 2006, 2008. He began a Flash website where he used all of my notations from Skratch Magazine, and he had a Flash programmer, actually, and I'll show all these things in a second. He had a Flash programmer copy all my designs. So like that Rocket, score that I just showed y'all, he had an actual Flash programmer, go and copy every exact thing exactly, right? Like, so it's like stuff like this. He had him copy everything I did exactly, and put it into a Flash website. Right, but now Flash is dead. Flash just died, in December last year. Right, so now his site is dead, where he was plagiarizing you know, a lot of my really, really hard work that I never got paid for, like all these things. But now I re-released all these as individual videos where it's like you can see the Skratch pickle notation I did, the Premiere notation I did, Diggable Planets notation I did, Jazzy Joyce. You know, shout out to Jazzy Joyce. You know, this is, you know, Women's Day, so I want to give a big, big shout out to Jazzy Joyce, a very, very amazing turntablist. And, you know, she was there at the beginning, you know, because she was schooled under Jazzy J, you know. And, you know, so she was there, you know, right after the first generation of people, right after Disco King Mario's generation, she was there, you know. So basically, I'm going to backtrack a little bit. Now, right when, we released this TTM 1.0, when we released TTM 1.0, and the reason this book is dirty, everybody's looking, is because this is an original copy from, you know, 20 years ago. Right? Like these are all like original copies from 20 years ago, you know, and these have been pretty much sealed too, or not totally sealed, but you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, just stuff in the back of a bookshelf or something. And you see, they've gotten, you know, it's actual paper. So they've gotten darker over time. They've gotten sullied and stuff. And there's, you know, little, microbes on it and stuff like that. But, so what I didn't, now we're going to talk about Skratch the movie. All right. Skratch the DVD. And so, you know, John Carluccio was actually one of the producers on that. Well, not one of the main producers, one of the small producers, right? It was a Doug Prey film with the Shepard Fairey album, with the Shepard Fairey cover on it. And I'll bring that up too in a second. But in the enhanced version, I'll have it to the side. But he was one of the producers in that movie, Skratch, right? Because you know, they brought him in the project because he had already released Battle Sounds, which was a seminal DJ documentary, you know, and that was my reason for originally, you know, contacting John. But his documentary led him to be, you know, brought into that project of Skratch the movie. And, you know, a lot of turntablists have seen Skratch the movie. And in the movie, there's a scene where John Carluccio is actually going like this. And he's, I think he's pointing at like maybe, he's pointing at, what is he pointing at? He's pointing at the flare Skratch, I think. Yeah, he's pointing at this. He's in the documentary, John Carluccio is like, yeah, da-da-da. And this is, I transcribed all of this stuff. And he didn't even invite me to the screening of the documentary. But, you know, I was young at the time. That must have been, because they released the film in 2001. So they must have filmed it in 2000 or maybe early 2001. And, you know, I was living at 14th Street at the time at Union Square at either Carlisle or U-Haul and, the dorms. I was in the dorms. So I was at Union Square, 14th Street. He was in, like Prospect Park in like South Brooklyn. So we were only like maybe 40 minutes on the train away from each other, you know, like 40 minutes on the train at the most, you know. And so he could have been like, hey, Ray, you know, they're about to come through my studio, you know, later today or tomorrow, you know, but he specifically didn't want me to be there, you know, explaining my own stuff. So if you look at the documentary Skratch the documentary, he's actually pointing at, you know, my notations. He didn't do any of this stuff. He wrote this stuff up here. You know, we collaborated and did this book together, but I did all the notations in the book, and then he tried to get, you know, take credit for it. And also, I think his name being Italian, a lot of people in their mind, they have this thing where it's like, oh yeah, you know, all these Italian inventors, Carluccio, sounds like an inventor, but he can't scratch, he can't juggle, he can't write, he can't read music, he can't write music, he's never written a scratch in his life. And in the movie, he was like, look, zigga, 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 like that. And in the movie, he like tried to write a little bit, you know, but he, you know, outside of a stab or something, he can't transcribe. And when I first met up with them and I had given them this book before we did the second book, my second book, this is my first book. And before I did my second book and collaborated with them, I had showed him all these things, you know, he showed me one piece of paper of stuff he was, you know, kind of working on, but, you know, nothing concrete, right? You know? So it didn't really hit me that John, purposely, I didn't know that he was one of the producers on the film, Skratch. So maybe at the time when I was 20, when Skratch came out in 2001, when I was 22, I just thought like, man, they didn't put me in the movie explaining my own notations in the movie. Maybe it was just, a timing thing, like John said. He was trying to weasel out of it and be like, oh yeah, but I'm like, I'm only 40 minutes away. If I'm only 40 minutes away, I could have easily, he could have easily called me up and I would have been there in a second. I would have skipped class. I would have skipped a test to be in a movie, to be in a movie that was released in actual theaters. It was actually released in theaters. It had a cinematic release with Shepard Fairey in the album cover before Shepard Fairey blew up. But yeah, so so that added to it. That was when I realized that years and years later, around 2008, when he had the website that was plagiarizing all my work from Skratch magazine that he never paid me for. And so I was like, I'm done with John, and that's why I'm done with him. I'm expelling him from any TTM stuff in the future. I'm never going to work with John Carluccio again. That's why you've never seen John Carluccio's name attached to any more types of Skratch notation stuff. Anything that John Carluccio's name that was attached to Skratch notation was something that I did. Except maybe he has one picture on his website, his TTM page, that where it's like some stuff that he scribbled down, like I was telling you before. But the main picture on that same page is a plagiarization of some of my routines that I transcribed in Skratch magazine in 2005. So by 2008, he had that website, and I had texted him. I was like, "Hey, John, can you credit me and stuff like that in this website? Like, I don't see my name anywhere. Can you put my name as a link or whatever?" And he was like, yeah, and he never did it. He just brushed me off. And what he also was doing too was he had a fake on this other website, maybe it was the Battle Sound side or something, he had Ray at battlesounds.com or DJ Radon at battlesounds.com or something like that, and it was forwarding to him. It wasn't forwarding to me. Like, I was like, I never got forwards from anybody talking about this or that, so, very, very shady stuff what he's doing. That's why, John Carluccio, that's it. I expelled him. So for the record, so now we're going to look at the actual proof. Shout out to everybody that's in the house. I showed y'all physical proof, but now we're going to look at stuff on the web really quick in the last 10 minutes of this lecture. So this is, we're smashing the smoke and mirrors, that all the cronyism that's going on in the turntablist world. All right. So I'm going to flip this around. All right. Flipping this around. All right. So, people, let's see. Let me go to here. All right. So I was just telling y'all about this when I was contacting John. I was like, "Greetings, John. When will the TTMmethod.com page be updated? It's still the same since we last spoke. I would like to be on the front page where it says John at battlesounds.com, as djradon at gmail.com. Also something that says all notations transcribed by DJ Radon, and something that says created by all three of us in 2000. Now, I'll get to you soon. Crazy busy." So he was brushing me off. Got to you soon. Crazy busy. Okay, time frame. This is 2012. And so greetings. When will the site be updated? I'll get on it this weekend. Check with me next week. Okay, greetings. Any progress? So he never updated the site, and I'll show bits of the site because the site is down now because it was a flash site. So, so now his whole site is gone, because it was all plagiarizations of my work. All right, I'm going to click the next one. This weekend. Okay, greetings. Any progress on the site? April 23rd, 2012. Yes, but the flash media is outdated, so it's taking longer. And then I hadn't heard from him since. All right. Now, this right here, this is a notation that I did in I have all the original vectors. That's the cool thing, is I have all the proof. I have vectors of everything. He doesn't have any of the vectors. He doesn't have any proof. He has nothing, because I transcribed everything. Anything he has is something that he copied from me. Now, so this like fresh, right? I did this in TTM 1.0 years ago, and he had a Flash designer take my vector back then and, or not even take the vector, just, try to recreate what I was doing. Right. And, the one thing that I will give Ethan and Bowden that he did help me with was was he thought of the idea of putting fresh at an angle instead of having it straight on a line like this. Because in my first book, the first book on scratch notation, this book right here, I'm gonna flip back around. Let me flip back around. So in this is the first book on scratch notation that ever existed. I'm gonna show you what, because I do want to give Ethan credit for this one thing that he did add. I used to write it like this. I used to write it vertically. I wasn't writing it like at an angle. And he was the one that thought of that, like, hey, what if you put it at an angle? And I'm like, yeah, that's a good idea. He's an industrial designer. We're refining things, right? So I'm like, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. So that's basically this grid is the only thing that Ethan contributed was the grid and turning and adding this sloping line here, because before I was just writing fresh, exactly, vertically instead of on a diagonal line. So he added that diagonal line. That's one thing that Ethan added, the one thing. All right. Now, so yeah, so he plagiarized this and so this is Ethan and Bowden right here. It's like, haha, wow, taking me back. All right. Now, so I'm going to read this right here. Well, actually, no, I'm not even going to read this because I already explained pretty much all this stuff, what's going on. I'm not trying to have like a 2-hour video, right? But this is just me explaining what I've been explaining, right? But I'll put the actual enhanced version of this that's going to be on YouTube. I'll put what all this is right here. Like I'll explain it before. Remember I was saying he copied everything from Assis Phonics, right? In the book, TTM 1.0. Now, so yeah, so like Skratch Dictionary, I was seeing stuff on the web like this in maybe like 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago, like, in the late 2010s, I was just seeing stuff like this. Not even late 2010s, the late noughties, the late, like around maybe 2008, 2009, 2010, I was seeing stuff like this where it's like, oh, invented by John Carluccio. I'm like, wow, everybody's saying it's invented by John, and John can't even write. John can't read music, write music. He can't read scratch notation nor write scratch notation, nor can he DJ or scratch. But it just goes to show he's a male of the European diaspora, and people give him the benefit of the doubt, right? And me being a black male, Moorish American, people, nobody ever affords my name, nobody, So that was one of the reasons why I created TTM Academy too, was to reclaim everything. Because I was looking on the web and I'm like, John Carluccio, what? I'm like, what? You didn't do any of that. I did everything, So yeah, I'm gonna flip back around now. All right, so let's move on. So yes, this is in Skratch magazine, the Skratch the movie, like I was saying, by Doug Prey, had a cinematic release, and in the enhanced version, there's a scratch notation demo, and it has a transcription of Rob Swift's routine, and this is the routine that he's pointing out in the movie Skratch, like I was saying earlier. This is him pointing out my notations of Rob Swift's routine. So, if Rob Swift, if you're in the house, I know you're John Carluccio's homie, but, John's been lying to you if he told you he transcribed this. I transcribed your whole routine, even the mistakes that are in the routine, because at the time I wasn't able to do, I wasn't doing chirps in 99, 2000. I only started really getting my chirps down years later. Right. So even with my notation of chirps, since I wasn't doing chirps, my notation of chirps was off, and because I think he was doing some chirp flares in that routine, and I didn't even know how to do a chirp flare yet, and I thought he was doing something else, and I think I wrote it down wrong. But yeah, so this is him pointing out in Skratch the movie, he never invited me to this. Right? I lived literally 40 minutes away from him. I could have been there in 40 minutes, and he never invited me to the screening of a movie that he was a producer on, where, he knew when they were going to be coming by. He could have easily invited me, He was in South Brooklyn. He was in Park Slope, and I was at 14th Street in Manhattan. All right. So it says scratch notation demo. So if anybody that's seen this, at the end, there's a multimedia version of Rob Swift's song Scratchin', right? And so this is me giving the first lecture at NYU, the first ever lecture on scratch notation. This was that spring after after I released my second book on scratch notation on February 17th with John at Symphony Space, all right? And these are just like proofs that I have all the original Illustrator vectors and stuff like that, and the dates, right? Stuff like that, right? And then, but you see me, you know, my name is, I think my name's in the liner notes here. Maybe it's not in the liner notes, but it's in the enhanced version of the it's in the DVD section, like the extra section. They have the demo, and you'll see my name in there, right? That was like one of the last times. So that was, yeah. So that was when I totally had it. So this is proving, this is my original vector, and this is John getting some Flash dude to copy it, right? He just made the point of the vectors a little bit bigger, but you can see it's my exact vectors. And John just, you know, had the guy copy it and make it blue, you know, thinking it's like, oh, it's different. It's not the exact same thing, you know? So he never did anything. John never, ever transcribed anything. John has never, you know, transcribed any of this stuff. Everything, I did everything, right? And that's why I have here the definition of fraud, you know, forgery, because that's what this is. You know, he was trying to, so there's this site on Facebook called TTM Turntablist Transcription Method album. It's called an album, right? We never released an album, but it's called an album, and it's just his site full of fake stuff. Like, do I even have the link on here? No, I don't think I have the link on here. But yeah, so it's just his site that's full of fake stuff. So yeah, that's basically it from this section of Why I Expelled John from my TTM project. Now let's go to here. This is me, John, and Ethan at SkratchCon 2000. After the show, or maybe before the show, or something like that, right? Let me go to here. Oh, Dave Chappelle. Let's see. Oops. All right. So yeah, this is Skratch magazine that I was showing earlier. All right, Skratch magazine. You know, it was going on in like maybe from 2005 to 2007, I think it says it. Oh no, debuted in 2004. So this was like 2004 all the way to, you know, like 2007. But I was only in the issues like 2004, 2005. You know, maybe just 2004, right? So all that stuff happened then. All right, and this next thing, let's see. And this is the site that he had all my stuff plagiarized on, but now you see nothing's there. It's a Flash site. Right, he had all my stuff plagiarized in it, and I'll show you some of the plagiarizations. I have it in Final Cut. I have a video version of it in Final Cut. And let's see, this is, let me skip that. Oh, this is like the Battle Sounds website, right? I'm trying to show something specific. Yeah, so this is the Battle Sounds site. Okay, so yeah, I think that's basically it. The last thing I wanted to show y'all is like, hey, a lot of people ask me, what's Ethan doing? This is Ethan and Bowden, right, who helped me with the grid in TTM 1.0, but that's about it. Ethan and Bowden, he, you know, people are wondering, oh, what did he end up doing? Like, does he still do Skratch stuff and like all that stuff? Well, you see he has these things in his fingers. It looks like it's some cool futuristic Skratch device or something, but really these are vibrators. These are, you know, adult toys. So he's an industrial designer. When he left New York, he moved he started a company called Frog Design, and then he started a company called Jimmy Jane, right? And I'm going to show you what Jimmy Jane is. So this is Jimmy Jane adult products, right? And then, so let me see, Jimmy Jane, I'm going to click on Jimmy Jane, right? So this is what Ethan and Bowden, this is literally dudes literally making dildos. That's what he's doing now. Or maybe he sold this company already, but that's what he's been doing these decades, right? So that's it, you know, because people wanted to know what he's doing now. So yeah, so that's basically it. Let me see, is that, yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah, so I'm done with this lecture. That's it. I kept it under an hour. So yeah, yeah, to wrap things up, yeah, John, you know, never ever transcribed anything. I transcribed every single thing in all these books, you know. So this is the first book on Skratch notation that ever existed, called The Fundamentals. If you want to pick that up, you can just, you know, contact me directly through PayPal. But I'll have the, you know, like Amazon official version of it out later this year. This was more of like a zine kind of style, where I passed out to people, like I think Aaron Spacecraft. Shout out to Spacecraft. I think he got, you know, he definitely got one of these copies of this book before TTM 1.0. Then I gave him this book too. All right. So yeah. So that's it. That's basically the story of why I ejected John from working with me on my TTM ventures. because I thought he was my friend and, you know, had the contacts in the industry and he was able to help me get out there. But for decades, he was telling people that he invented it. And he, you know, so for that reason, telling people he invented it, not inviting me to point at and explain my own Skratch notations in the movie Skratch by Doug Prey. You know, so he was shady in that. He was one of the producers, and he didn't, you know, tell me about the day of shooting. You know, so for that, not for Skratch Magazine, all these issues of Skratch Magazine, he kept the money, never gave me 1 penny. I never got 1 penny. I didn't even get copies of these things. I had to go to the store and buy these things myself. Right, so it's just multiple reasons, you know, and then having a website with all my notations that I did in 2004 and 2005, you know, basically plagiarizing all of it and having some other guy copy all of it. Oh yeah, and last thing, yeah, let me just show you really quickly. I'm going to show you what it actually looks like, what the site looks like, because now his site is deleted forever since it was all in Flash. You know, Flash is dead now, right? So the site looks something like this. Let me find the right one. Let me see. Oh, Final Cut's taking a second to load. Oh, there we go. So let me scroll up. It's right here. So yeah, this is just a little quick. I'm just going to show some little snippets. So this is what the site was like. It looked like this, and it had the rocket thing in the beginning, like it had that stuff in it. So these are all my transcriptions. So everything that was in this website that was here, it was a, you know, very extensive tutorial website that had everything, all my work in it, right? And he never credited me, never, you know, never gave me any money, never, all this stuff. I transcribed all these notations, Jazzy J, right? Mixmaster Ice. So all these are now available on my TTM Academy page, right? So yeah, Cash Money, Ugly People Be Quiet. I'm going to drop that one soon. Right, this is Grandmaster Flash, you know, his famous Grandmaster Flash and the Wheels of Steel. So John, all these are, I notated all these things, and John basically stole all of them and didn't put my name on them, right? And you saw my text asking him like, hey, can you put my name on this? You know, he didn't. Steve D routine, I transcribed that, right? All these things that, you know, I transcribed all of these things, like. You know, this is from the first book, from TTM 1.0. All these scratches I transcribed, right? And you notice there's no chirps in there because, you know, I couldn't do chirps at the time, right? So, yeah, all this is the Rob Swift routine. See that? The Rob Swift routine. All that stuff. This is Skratch Pickles routine right here. This is like Invasion of the Octopus People. I'm going to press play for a second. Right, so yeah, that, you know, that's one of the first time that a team routine was ever transcribed. You know, so, you know, he tried to steal all my stuff. All right, so that's it. All right, so that's it. So that's to sum it up. That's why I'm no longer working with John Carluccio, and I'll never work with him again. Just for, you know, constantly lying, being shady, taking money. You know, telling, you know, trying to claim credit for my work. You know, it's just craziness. Totally craziness. So, all right, peace, everybody. All right, thanks for listening. All right. Oh, and make sure to like and subscribe. All right, peace. And like on the Instagram, too. So, TTM Academy on Facebook, TTM Academy on YouTube, TTM Academy on Instagram, TTM Academy Twitter. All right, peace.